This is a great time for women in the U.S., as Rachel pointed out a bit earlier. But I also think it's one of the most confusing times. Who are we supposed to be? That's the question. It's something that we grapple with, most all of us. And who hasn't been caught at least a few times in the worthless swirl of trying to be everything to everyone, everywhere, all the time? It's something that we all deal with, men and women. I believe the goal for a thinking woman is to make her way through her career and home life, gaining wisdom and a real, deeply felt confidence and clarity that comes with losing the anger, confusion, and negative people that can come along when you have the guts to ask questions and expect equality in the world. I've seen a lot of these different approaches in my years in communication, both in my role in the media as a news reporter and anchor and as a businesswoman through the different companies that I've worked with along the way, and now as the national chair of the Association for Women in Communications. What I've come to realize about myself is that the only times I haven't accomplished something is when I was in my own way. If there was something that I wanted to do and I didn't do it, it was purely because I was in my own way. To state it another way, when someone tells you that you can't do something, what they're really telling you is they can't do it. Anyone who knows me really well has probably heard me say this to them in my effort to lift them up, but it's true. When someone tells you you can't do something, what they're telling you is they can't. They don't have any idea what you can accomplish, only you know that, and you decide that. It's just a choice you make. It's something that I heard at the age of 22 when we were shooting video, actually in our early years, with computer pioneers from the University of Illinois, and it stuck with me ever since. It made a huge impact on me. I started a media production company with my husband when we were 22 years old, recent college graduates, and it's been the constant over the past 20 years as my news career worked around the business through different parts of my life, whether it was radio, TV reporting, and the anchoring, and then now as a corporate communications consultant. Our company has given me an interesting insight and a different point of view that I don't think I would have had if I had focused solely on something such as news media. So how did I come to the odd mix? Well, I think when it came to the career, it was a bit of necessity and a bit of opportunity. When I graduated from college, the country was reeling from the effects of the Persian Gulf War. Many news outlets were financially stretched after sending reporters and resources to war-torn areas. They were cutting back, not just small places, CNN, the networks as well. And I graduated to find fewer news opportunities than there had been in the past. And my most entertaining job offer came from Northern California. They suggested that I live with the other female anchor, and I could save money that way because they were offering to pay me $10,500 a year, something that I could only even consider if my parents were there and I could maybe, have them feed me. But I didn't have anybody like that in that area, so with no family there, I passed on that job. After a few more possibilities like that just didn't click, I realized something. I was looking for strangers to allow me to prove how great an employee I was, how capable I was. I already knew these things about myself. So in talking to Phil, we were just dating at the time, we realized that this was the time to start our own thing, to create our own media production company. I enjoy a challenge, and I love to build things. One big lesson I've learned is that when you stick your neck out, it often pays off. We chipped away at the potential client possibilities for months at the start, and I remember our first deal, okay? I was by myself, and I was sitting with the head of advertising for the Eureka company, now Electrolux. I could not afford to take care of the $12 in laundry that I had in the back seat of my black Camaro, and it had been sitting there for 2 weeks because I didn't have the $12, right? But I had just made our first official big deal. I called Phil at work, and we felt we'd arrived. That deal was the equivalent of more than 2 months' pay for him in his first post-college job. It was a big deal. He was a commercial producer at a local TV station. So it's not that much, honey, right? I'm teasing. I'm totally teasing. Big money for a college kid or right out of college. We were producing 2 videos for the International Housewares Show in Chicago. One project was a short glamour video, and the other project was an intro video for Apollo 13 astronaut James Lovell, and it was going to be shown at the show. It was pure elation for us. It was a big, big deal. In the first couple of years, we struggled to be taken seriously. In fact, that issue is one reason that I kept my given name, Henneberry. My husband and I noticed when sitting at a business table, decision makers, they would talk to him and not me at the age of 22. They'd often address him before either of us spoke. And you might assume, well, that is because he has such a commanding presence. But okay, he will be the first to tell you who has a commanding presence at the age of 22. We realized if some people we met with knew we were married, I lost my credibility. Interestingly, it didn't work against Phil, my husband, just me. It's as if some people, many of them women, they needed to reduce my value based on their own feelings about themselves. It had nothing to do with me or him. That's one reason that the quote, "We see the world as we are, not as it is," and I usually travel with that quote wherever I work, and it usually just sits there on my wall. The fact that we see the world as we are, not as it is such an important idea that we keep in mind when we work with people. Very little is personal, and so much of what you get from people is a reflection of their own choices and decisions. When you are satisfied and content, that is what you spread, and vice versa. On the topic of trusting your instincts, you know you've made the right decision when there is peace in your heart, and that's what it comes down to. It's pretty simple, but that's what I've learned over the years. I've found that many working women share these kinds of stories and others like the ones that I'm talking about later here tonight. And I have come to believe that our collective power comes from sharing these stories. Besides the value of knowing that you're not alone, it's vital to give voice to what is happening as a responsibility to younger generations who need to know. To give context to this progress we talk about, but it is sometimes hard to quantify however you decide to handle these highly individual situations. A few lessons I learned early on were that I have a chance to handle inequitable situations with anger or humor. And I think I have displayed both along the way as I've decided who I am in this world. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it did not. So I realize now that my choices have taken me down several different communication career paths over the years, and I'm extremely happy about that because after all, I'm one of those people who, one of the most important things to me in my life is not to reach 100 years old and look back and wish I had tried something that was something I was interested in doing. It's a big, big deal to me. One of the paths, the more personal one, that my husband and I debated taking for years was children. And here's something really interesting. I have been asked twice along the way by employers whether or not I had any children or was planning to have any soon in relation to jobs. Well, totally inappropriate, especially considering my husband has never fielded any question ever in business on this topic. I actually had a situation that to this day I find mind-boggling. Once the general manager, sales manager, and news director in one of my jobs took me to lunch to tell me how promotions were going and how much they'd invested in me. They transitioned into a discussion about how much they would have liked to have avoided having children. Each one telling me about mistakes that they'd made with their own kids and how taxing it was for each of them in their careers. They would end the lunch by alluding to the fact I should wait a very long time to have children if I ever decided to have them at all. And I was in my mid to upper 20s at the time, not planning to have them, but just angry enough to go, I am now. I'm a little bit like that, so it's a little bit how I work. But waiting was our plan, and we're glad we did because now we truly love being with our 8-year-old daughter Lucy and her 4-year-old brother Liam. Good kids, good eggs. Virtually every opportunity I've had in my life has been through word of mouth, and AWC has been a big, big part of that for me. Joining our chapter in Bloomington-Normal was pretty much the first professional thing I did after college graduation. It was a priority because I knew at the time the value of networking and mentoring. Our business has allowed me to do different things professionally on my own terms. Having control of the quality of company's work from start to finish gives you a different perspective on how business works. You understand the pleasure and the pain of each step in the process when it comes to satisfying clients. We had a hunch out of college those years ago, and master marketer Seth Godin, I'm sure many of you know exactly who I'm talking about, says that hunch is the way of the world today that anyone can latch onto. He talks about you and me as creators, innovators, as the key to the future now. If you can communicate by showing people what you've made and do it in a way that reaches them with a personal touch, a story they can connect to, you don't need a mass of humanity to make you successful. You can make your mark with a focused, targeted group of followers, admirers, believers. It's the most amazing opportunity that way. The communication factor is the bridge. You are the bridge, whether it's your own ideas, products, plans, or if you are communicating on behalf of someone else. You are the link as a professional communicator. In my news career, I've been honored to receive a couple of Associated Press Best Reporter awards covering tornadoes, hurricanes, tax disputes, teachers' strikes, murders, fires, politics, prison escapes, the largest sexual harassment settlement in history. You know the game. You know the way this works, right? I had career conditioning a lot of women would identify with, knowing I was working twice as hard to get half as much credit. In journalism, it was my daily mission to take the hardest stories, hard-edged stories. I intentionally tried to stay away from the stereotyping women can find themselves subject to, the idea that females are only interested and suited to stories about puppies in preschools, as wonderful as puppies in preschools are, mind you. I assumed heading into my career that the old stereotypes were gone, but they're still in so many places now, then, they exist.